Perfect. Okay. We're on class 4 already. Sweet. Come to
Awesome.
the end. Hopefully you found the classes so far to be valuable and helpful in getting ready to do this thing. And tonight, class 4 is the 10 essential keys to a successful natural birth. Can you guys see the right slide? Does it say 10 keys?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So these are things that, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in the last 3 classes. I feel like we've talked about a lot of essential things for having a successful natural birth and kind of not having hangups in that plan. But I still feel like these 10 essential keys are like, it's not necessarily the childbirth method. It's not necessarily like what pain relief you use. There's just these things that I think are so important when you want to basically not let your plans crash and burn. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is those 10 things that I really think if you make sure to cover all 10, I really think that you're going to be way more likely to end up having the birth that you want. And at the very least, you'll feel empowered and feel good about your birth experience no matter what. Let's see. Hello. Okay, I pushed the wrong button. Okay, so key number 1 is to hire a doula. And we have already talked about this in previous classes. Hiring a doula I forgot to put the stats on this on my notes, but we did talk about it last week. But hiring a doula definitely increases your chances of having a natural birth. It decreases your likelihood of having a cesarean. It increases the likelihood of having a spontaneous vaginal birth, which means that not induced. Greatly helps with your pain. And really, I think the informational support is so helpful of a doula, of just having that evidence-based like information at your fingertips, and the emotional and
your overall satisfaction with the birth, regardless of the outcome, even if you're taken advantage of and feel taken advantage of at some points in your birth, I think that it does play a huge role in the emotional outcome afterwards as well for yourself.
Right. Just having that like confidant to, be supporting you and advocating for you and that sort of stuff. So I think hiring a doula is probably, if you want a natural birth, I think that is really like one of the number 1 things. Mm-hmm. Key number 2, avoid an unnecessary induction. You've got to be patient when you're wanting a natural birth. The best thing overall is just to let your body do its thing and trust the whole process, and realize that babies are born on their birthdays, not on their due dates. Like, they don't have an expiration date.
Yeah. And as you get going and you're impatient with wanting to be done being pregnant, and you're just big and you're uncomfortable and everything hurts and you can't sleep, you're not sleeping very well, like, your baby's still being taken care of and you aren't having to do the taking care of it. No, you're not able to hold them in your hands, but you don't have to hear them crying and wonder what in the world is wrong with them. And you don't know if you're going to get a colicky one. So while they're in your belly, they're perfectly fine. They're content. And that's always something to help you with those last few weeks, I think, to just be like, at least I'm not having to sit up with a baby who's crying all night long and you just don't know what's wrong.
Yeah. Some of my best advice, I think, is to try to, as hard as you can, to just expect to be pregnant past your due date, so that you don't get too antsy. Because if you start thinking like, oh, I'm due in 4 days, like I'm gonna have this baby in 4 days, then once the 4 days comes, or even in that last week or 2, you're just like, well, maybe today, and you just tend to, like, you're already burnt out by the time 40 weeks hits. You're like, oh, I'm so pregnant, like, and you are. But I've gone 2 weeks over with the last couple, and it is hard and it's not fun, but it's the less like hands-on you can be, just letting your baby and your body do what it needs to do, the more likely you are going to be to have a natural birth. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's never a necessary reason to induce, because there is, and there is evidence to show that risks can increase after 41 weeks. However, that doesn't mean, a lot of people think that because risks of stillbirth increase after 41 weeks, then that means that it's it's for sure going to happen, or that means that it's not safe to be pregnant after 41 weeks. And that's not necessarily true, because you can monitor things more closely after 41 weeks. And like someone like me, I know that my body has a history of doing that. And so I wouldn't be concerned about it. Maybe if I always had given birth at 39 weeks and then I got pregnant again and I was going to 41 and there was cause for concern, that's a different story. So this again is why it's so critical to have a care provider that's on the same page. Because if you have a care provider that you like totally trust 150%, like my midwife, I trust 100%. So if she were to say, I have some concerns, I think that we need to induce labor, I wouldn't question it. I would do it 100%, because I know that she wouldn't suggest it if it weren't necessary. The problem is that a lot of providers do suggest induction after 40 weeks without good medical reason to do so. And so that's where you run into problems, because if your body isn't ready, and that's not, we're not talking about like you being like, I want this baby out, but if your body's not ready, if your cervix isn't ripe, then you can't really force a baby out. What that looks like is a cesarean. Is if a mom gets induced and her body isn't ready, I mean, you can push Pitocin and do all these things, but ultimately what ends up happening is a cesarean a lot of times. And so I think this again is why that first major mistake of hiring the wrong provider for you is such a big deal, because you need to trust that if your doctor or your midwife is suggesting an induction, that it's necessary. But ultimately, if you can, unless there's a medical reason, you should wait and let your baby come on.
Well, and some key things to look out for in your provider, and it's okay at 37 weeks if you're like, you know what, you start hearing, well, we may have to take this baby early, it's already looking big, or it's looking like it might be a big baby and you've got some really narrow hips.
Yep.
When you start hearing things like that, that's code word for, we're probably going to try and push you to have an induction and stuff. And it's okay to switch providers even at that point. If you're suspecting they're not gonna, if you've talked about all these things with your provider and they start bringing this stuff up last minute, then that's a sign to you that you need to switch providers, talk to some other providers. And it is totally okay to swap that late in the game. It is.
And it's also okay to get a second opinion. If you're like, okay, my doctor or my midwife is saying this, but I'm not really sure, get a second opinion. Do not wipe that on my couch. Go wash your hands.
So
sorry.
Don't feel that those times.
Yeah. Two of the most common reasons for unnecessary inductions, so these are the ones that I start to perk my ears up for, are your baby's big, big baby, and if it's just because you're past 40 weeks. Just because you're past 40 weeks, a 41 weeks is not a medical reason for inducing. Just because you're 41 weeks, that's not a medical reason. If you're 41 weeks and there's evidence that your placenta is deteriorating, or if there's evidence that you have too little fluid, or there's evidence of that, your baby's not doing well on a biophysical profile, those types of things, then you can talk about, whether it's necessary or not. But just because it's a date thing, that's not necessary. So those are kind of some things to look out for. But overall, if you can, just stay patient. Don't start getting antsy at 39 weeks. What can I do to get this baby out? What can I do to induce naturally? Just let things happen, and you're going to be a lot better off. And that goes for as you get into labor too. If you can kind of just have that mindset about it, to just trust your body, then everything becomes a lot easier. key number 3 is to opt for intermittent fetal monitoring versus continuous electronic monitoring. So continuous electronic monitoring is like the belts that you see here in this picture. That's where they put the electrode things on your, are those called electrodes? Maybe they're not.
I think,
But,
well, maybe not for fetal monitoring.
but they're called, I mean, not called, one monitors your baby's heart rate and one monitors your contractions. And here's the thing. So there are several reasons I recommend avoiding this continuous monitoring. First of all, obviously, look at this woman here. Like, she's on her back, she's hooked up to all these things. She's not going to be able to move, right? So you can't move around and do what you want when you're hooked to the monitors. So that's one thing, is just, it's annoying. And it, you know, limiting your mobility is more than just annoying, because then you have more pain.
Yes, it makes it so much more painful to just lay there on your back, no less.
Right. And on the mobility thing, before we move from this slide, Chris, don't let me forget, we can talk about the IV thing.
Yes.
But the funny thing about this is, and I think that when we just assume in healthcare in general that whatever it is that the hospital protocols are, or whatever doctors normally do, is there clearly must be evidence to back these practices, right? I mean, otherwise they wouldn't do them. And I think maybe now more than ever, we realize that isn't necessarily true in medicine. And with these electronic fetal monitoring, like these machines kind of burst on the scene around 1970. And the guy that invented this machine didn't even intend for it to be used continuously in the first place. That's not even what it was for. And second of all, like, once they started using them, they're like, oh, this is super cool. And then, you know, they're wanting to sell these machines to hospitals. Those are daddies.
Well, and the hospital wants it to be, you know, oh, look, we got the latest and greatest, you know, so they can get more patients and bring more doctors. And
yeah, so when they started using them, it was like this new technology. The problem is that there never was any evidence showing that there was great benefit to using these continuous monitors. Huh?
I said, it's just really cool.
Yeah, and there never was a lot of evidence, and believe it or not, there still isn't. Okay, so they started using them in about 1970, and from 1970 to 2016, C-section rates jumped from 5% to 32%. And the reason for the cesarean non-reassuring heart tones, quotes, non-reassuring heart tones, is the second most common cause of first-time cesareans. Of moms having their first cesarean. So that's certainly not a coincidence, because what happens when you're on these monitors, well, and this is kind of just another problem, is the center of attention. And I've seen this as a doula so many times, and I know Jess can attest to this, and Chris, any births, you've been to births before, like, can attest to this. The center of attention becomes the monitor and not the mom. And it drives me nuts. Like, I feel like you're there to, like, who's in the show here? You should be getting the support. You should be having people care about you. And instead, everyone's staring at that dumb machine. And not only that, they're staring at the dumb machine and like, oh, that looks like a big one. That looks like a pretty good contraction. How's that feeling? And it's like, oh my gosh, like, really, it's obnoxious. So 89% of women birthing in a hospital have electronic fetal monitoring at some point in their labor. Of those, 60% of them had monitoring continuously. That means they were on these monitors their entire labor, which is really where the problem comes in. 20% of those, they were on the monitors most of the time. So if 89% of women have this monitoring at some point, that means combining those other statistics up, that means only 9% just had continuous or had electronic monitoring like intermittently, right? So we know that it's important to monitor a baby's heart rate during labor. That's very important. But it's not necessary to monitor continuously. There hasn't been evidence showing that it's beneficial to do that. However, we see that there's a lot of problems with doing it this way, limiting mobility, causing unnecessary concern, stuff like that. So I definitely recommend intermittent monitoring, which is monitoring obviously intermittently. So they need to do it, you know, the baby needs to be monitored a few times an hour, like every 15, 20 minutes. And a lot of times what I'll see in hospital births with moms that say, I want intermittent monitoring, is they're like, okay, well, if you want to move around, that's totally fine. But what we'll do is we'll just put you on this monitor for 20 minutes every hour, which sounds like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. I'll move around, I'll do my thing. And then once an hour, I'll get in bed and they'll put me on the monitor for 20 minutes. But what happens most of the time, in fact, almost every time in my experience anyway, is that 20 minutes turns into 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, because either the nurses are busy and they can't make it back in, or what happens is they come in and they're like, oh, there's a little blip I see there on there. I'm just not really sure. We need to leave you on for another 20 minutes because they have to have recorded on there. Like we have a certain amount of time where the baby's heart rate's perfect. It's exactly what they want to see. And so what happens is then mom gets stuck on this monitor for the entire time. So now they have these wireless monitors, which are nicer because you don't have to like have all these wires and stuff. They just like, it's kind of, it sticks to your belly and it works wirelessly. So like through the Wi-Fi in the hospital. So it sends the this like monitoring to the nurse's station, well, and to your little thing in your room. But the problem I've seen with those, it's not a perfect solution. It's better for sure. It's better, but it's not a perfect solution because it still doesn't solve the problem of them like seeing these tiny little, this whole
Well, that's how they're
non-reassuring heart tone
monitoring
thing.
the entire labor and delivery.
Yes.
Instead of watching the mom and seeing the progression, in order for the staff to swap out and nobody have to be in there and take staff away and to watch you the whole time to see how the progress is going, to see how mom is doing, to go in and make sure you check the heartbeat and keep a really good eye on the baby's heartbeat yourself, and watching the mom labor. It's a shortcut. They use it as a shortcut so they can say, oh yeah, it's going fine, we're good, she's doing fine, labor's going fine, because they're just worried about that the heartbeat of this baby is okay, and that's it. It's just as long as there's a healthy baby outcome. And I think moms a lot of times are the ones going through this and getting forgotten about. Like, of course the baby's important, but baby and mom are as one at that moment, and you need to watch mom laboring to see if repositioning needs to occur and all these things. And this is a shortcut that they've created that's really a crappy shortcut and makes things bad for mom. And a lot of people don't care because they're just like, well, as long as there's a healthy baby. Well, hi, Jem. It's not good that moms, are getting stuck under a knife and these children potentially, losing their mom or mom having to go through C-sections and stuff. So that's what they're doing with it.
Yeah, it really is a convenience factor for the staff. And it's also a liability thing because they want to have the constant monitoring on the strip. That's a permanent record.
Yeah,
and
they'd have to write down everything that was going on with the mom while she was laboring otherwise, for liability reasons and your statistics at the end of the year as far as labor and delivery and stuff goes.
Yeah, so I mean, don't misunderstand. We're not saying you don't need to have monitoring. You do. It's a matter of
Yeah.
how you get monitored. It's just that this continuous electronic monitoring is not the best option. And the
Yeah.
thing that
For
that's
moms.
irritating about it's just for babies too, I feel like, because the thing that's irritating is there isn't evidence saying, there is no evidence still to show that outcomes are better for moms or babies when they use continuous electronic monitoring. There's no data saying that. So
Yeah.
in fact, the data shows the opposite when we're looking at increased C-section rates and that kind of thing. So if you're on, moms who have continuous electronic monitoring are 63% more likely to have a cesarean and 15% more likely to have a vacuum or forceps assisted delivery. And that's because it's more common to see these fetal heart patterns that are non-reassuring. And so then they're like, oh, we got to get this baby out right now.
Yeah.
And so what you can do instead is they can use a Doppler, or there's all different kinds of fetal stethoscopes. Gemma.
Well, and also when we're talking about the monitoring and being hooked up, are you done with the different types of monitors?
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on the IV and stuff. When you're at the hospital and things, one good thing so that you can move around easier and you're not tied up is not to opt for the IV, but to get a hep lock put into your hand so that if they need to, they can easily, they've already accessed a vein and they've got the little port there so they can hook you up to an IV if you need it, but you don't have to be hooked to the IV. So it's easier to move around. You don't have to worry about the cables. You don't have to have your hand being tugged on because it's uncomfortable to have that thing in your hand in the first place. But when you've got the tubes connected to you, it's more uncomfortable, and you have, just for your comfort and stuff, to opt for a hep lock versus the full-on IV.
Yeah, that just makes it more comfortable. And sorry, our names were screwed up. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what I snickered about earlier.
Oh man. All right. Okay. Key number 4, prepare your laboring and birthing environments. So this is kind of an obvious one, but I think that it's something you shouldn't overlook.
It plays a huge role in how your comfort level and your like your overall, you want to have all your equipment there.
Yeah, and relaxing is one of the most important things. We talked about that so much last week when we were talking about pain methods. It's all about relaxation and being relaxed. And one of the biggest factors in keeping your body relaxed and your mind stress-free is your environment. So to just have all your little labory things that you need, a birth ball, all the things that you need,
Types
and
of
hospitals
music
have
you
them.
like.
Yeah, music, lighting,
Yeah.
affirmations on your wall. Like affirmations are great to have on your wall in front of you when you're birthing. Just that you're powerful and my body's working beautifully. Those kind of things are great to have, great reminders to have.
Or sticky notes reminding you to breathe. Did you breathe yet? I'll just, maybe some big pillows so you can lay down and have a big body pillow and lay on your side. You want all these things ready and there and ready to go. If you're doing a home birth, you want to have your pool ready and know who's going to set that up and if that's going to be set up right, so that you're not worrying about any of that when you're laboring. You don't want to be, calling for your husband and being like, I don't know how that hookup works. And, oh, just a sec. And trying to, get everything out. Just have it all ready and know what you want in your environment. If you like music, don't like music, want the lights up, want the lights down. Do you want the oils in the diffuser? What scents do you like? Because you're not going to like the ones that make you nauseous.
Right.
So
All the things. Make your make your birth area a haven for yourself.
yeah,
And
I think
that's also like for how are you going to labor? So if you plan to birth in the hospital, there's certain things you can do to set up your room the way you want it, like Crystal said, taking your comfortable pillows, or if you want to take, whatever things you want to take from home to keep yourself comfortable there. But remember, your labor isn't just at the hospital, which is what we're going to talk about in just a second. You're going to
yeah,
be laboring at home too before you go there. So that should be a place set up so that you can start your labor off in a really good place. And key number 5 on that note is labor at home as long as possible. This is a huge one. Just don't go to the hospital too early. So, let's talk about like instincts, our bodily instincts. So, if you think of animals, if a female animal is in labor and she senses danger, if she senses danger and gets stressed, her brain will release hormones that will stop her labor so that she's able to get to a safe place and deliver her young. So the same thing happens with us. These are natural instincts that we're born with. So when your fight or flight response kicks in, when you sense danger or fear, your body releases hormones that will slow down your labor and can even stop. So this is why I don't know if you've heard stories of, or, huh?
because you can't relax when you're in fight or
Yes.
flight.
Yes. So I don't know if you've experienced yourself or heard stories of women who are like, I think I'm in labor, and they go into the hospital and like, I thought I was in labor and I went to the hospital and like everything slowed down, way down, or labor even stopped altogether.
Mhm.
I've heard of that happening so many times, and it's because your body, those hormones are stopping your labor because you've got a fear response going. So it's really important to labor at home as long as you possibly can, because labor will progress a lot more quickly when you're relaxed and you're most comfortable. So it will progress better. You're going to be in less pain because you're in your home environment. Um, you can move around, you can do what you want, you have all the things that you want. Um, and you're not going to feel like just this waiting thing at the hospital. Oh, let's see. There we go. Sorry about that. And there's just, I see so often, like once a woman goes into a hospital, it's like, it's kind of this change in mindset. Like you get there and you're like, okay, well, we got to have this baby, and then you're starting on the clock of the hospital staff of like, okay, they don't want you there taking up a bed for forever. So if you have a long labor and you really want a natural birth, you're increasing your likelihood of interventions being suggested. And you don't want to start down that cascade of intervention. You really just want to leave things alone unless there's a medical necessity for changing up the plan.
And you
I
don't
mean,
need
remember throughout this whole class, everything is given that your baby and you are healthy. We're never saying like, if there's an issue, there's never an intervention that's necessary. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying, if it's not necessary.
Yes. And another thing is you want to avoid going to the hospital and as stuff gets late, getting pressured into stuff that maybe you don't want, that you're going to look back on later and be like, wow, I really didn't need that. It's,
Right.
it's a, it's a balancing act. And that's why the care provider is such the key element in all this, is making sure you get a care provider that's not going to try and if you've been laboring, you're laboring and doing all these things, and then midnight hits and they're like, all right, it's looking like you need to have an induction. You've been here for
10 hours already.
10 hours already.
Whatever.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, that little blip that you've had on your little thing, your monitor for the past 6 hours, that comes up once in a while. Well, I think the baby's having fetal heart distress.
Yeah.
And then, then I mean, unfortunately, that stuff does happen. And I
It
mean, there are
happens
legitimate
every day.
times when stuff happens that needs to be addressed by your care provider, but you have to have a care provider that's on the same page as you, or you could get that care provider's like, you know what, it's really late. I don't want to get called in at 3.
Yeah.
So
Well,
why don't
and
you just take care of this now?
on that note too, like with getting to the hospital too early, your provider isn't going to get there until, I mean, sure, they're overseeing your care on the phone, the nurses will keep in touch with them and that kind of thing, but like your doctor or midwife doesn't come until like the show really gets started. And so you are kind of like, you are subject to the care of the nurses. So um I do see, depending on how sometimes nurses are amazing and they're so super supportive of natural birth, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like, well, are you sure you don't want a little pitocin? Are you sure you don't want this? Da, 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 da. So you can eliminate a lot of that if you just don't get to the hospital until you're already well in active labor, and don't go before then. So we'll
Well, and
talk
then
about
you
that in
don't
just a,
get through the staffing switches either, which is where stuff I think gets going when new staff comes in and they're like, how many times have we had a shift change and you're still here?
yeah.
Type of thing.
And I had a client who was a VBAC mom. She had had a cesarean her first time around. She really wanted a VBAC. And we were at her home and she was, really starting to feel like I really think I want to go in. And I was like, all right. And as a doula, I'm never gonna say, oh, I think you shouldn't. If you think that you're ready and your instinct tells you we should go there, then that's fine. So we went to the hospital and she was only at like a 4, and she was pretty disappointed, and the staff was like, okay, well, we can admit you, da 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 da. And I asked to talk to her in private so she wouldn't feel like pressure from a bunch of other people, and we took a walk, and I said, these are your options, like, we can stay here but you're only at a 4, or we can go home, and I know that labor's intense, but we can go home, we can see if we can get you some rest and try to come back when you're a little bit more in established labor, because it really came down to like, how bad you want this feedback. Like, I'm just telling you, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you, if we stay here, you're going to be a lot more likely to have interventions. It's going to be a lot harder to pull off this feedback. And so she was like, yeah, I think you're right. Let's go home. So we took her home for several more hours, and she was in quite hard labor, but she got a tiny bit of rest, but not a ton, and we went back a few hours later and she was in established active labor and she had that VBAC, and it's changed her life, to know that her body could do that, because she felt broken after that first cesarean. She felt like, my body can't birth. And so it's a big deal. It's a big deal for moms. So anyway, yeah, labor at home as long as possible. So when should you go to the hospital? Like, that's a big question that moms have, is like, when do I go then? When should I go? So a good rule of thumb is 5-1-1. So that's when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute for at least an hour. So when you've had an hour of that strong of a pattern, your contractions every 5 minutes, a minute long, then it's probably time to go to the hospital. And some doctors say 4-1-1, like for first time moms, 4 minutes apart. So really, talk to your provider about that. Like, when would you like me to call you? When would you like me to go in? And get their take on it. Like, don't, like, this isn't written in stone. This is just what I see commonly. Key number 6. This kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, is be patient and avoid unnecessary augmentations. So unless
See, and this
unless
lady has
there's
a hep lock. Just
huh?
I said, and I chose this picture because I noticed that lady had her hep lock
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah, on the other hand.
wasn't connected to the monitor, but they're still checking that baby.
Yeah. So unless there's a medical reason to try to speed up labor, if the baby's not doing so well, or you're not doing so well, you're too tired or whatever,
Mhm.
just try not to put time limits on your labor and trust your body. So if you can, that's one of the best things that you can do to ensure a natural birth, is to not get Pitocin during labor because it does make things more painful. The contractions are a lot harder. And avoid getting your water broken if you can. I mean, sometimes every situation is different, but getting your water broken is better than getting on Pitocin, in my opinion. Like, if the labor really needs some speeding up and it's like, comes down to it, like, okay, well, we need to do something. I feel like breaking the water first and seeing if that will do something to speed labor up is a better first step than just jumping right to Pitocin usually. But unless you have a reason to break it, I don't think it's the best idea because for a few reasons. It has the risks of introducing infection. Once you break your water, your baby is no longer floating up. So once the baby doesn't have that buoyancy in there, the baby can't as easily rotate and move into the proper position. Once you break the bag of water, the baby's going to drop down and it's just going to be, and the baby's kind of going to engage in whatever position the baby's going to engage. So it becomes harder. That rotation becomes a little bit harder. However, it puts that pressure on that cervix and sometimes will help to dilate faster. So it's not always like the worst thing in the world, but I'm not a fan.
It's good, but for the most part, if you can avoid it, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just wait, because then you're stuck there. So if your contractions stop and they end up doing that, they will not let you out of there with a broken bag, because you now have a lot more risks going on. So the procedure itself is not risky, but the outcome can cause riskier factors afterwards. So you can't go. You're stuck at the hospital. You're fully committed at that point.
And a lot of hospitals and doctors want your baby delivered within 24 hours of your bag being broken, which is not necessarily evidence-based. Yeah, it's not necessarily evidence-based either, without other factors like a broken water bag in itself is not a reason to be like, oh, you have to deliver within 24 hours. But that is the procedure in most places, and so it puts you on the clock. So pretty much just if you really are serious about having a natural birth, the best thing to do is just try to let everything happen the way it's going to happen from the get-go, unless there's a reason not to, if something's going on with the baby or whatever. And this goes kind of with stripping your membranes too. Stripping your membranes isn't like something that I'm like, oh, if you get your membranes stripped, you're way less likely to have a natural birth. It doesn't, no, it's not. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just in the mindset of like, just being patient. So do you have anything else to say on that, Chris?
No.
Okay. Key number 7, eat and drink during labor. Sometimes you'll hear that you shouldn't eat and drink during labor, which is a myth. Just think about like if you were to run a marathon, you wouldn't do it without food, right?
Yeah. And for some women, that like labor goes on for a long time. For some women, you're not going to go and do this very, very tiring. I mean, you're delivering a human outside of your body, another entire human outside of your body, and you're losing fluid if your water's broken, and you're not going to eat nor drink. That makes zero sense. You have so much energy you're expelling and expending. You need to be drinking and eating.
Yes. So it's good. Early in labor, I always tell my clients to eat a good protein packed something, like eat something good, have good electrolyte drinks at your labor to replenish keep you really nice and hydrated. That will reduce the necessity of having an IV because you do need to stay hydrated during labor. So drink a lot of water.
Pack snacks for your support team as well, because if you're there for 24 hours, your support team doesn't want to leave you to run get some food.
Right. And I thought Crystal put this picture in here of the cheese and crackers. It's so funny because that's like my favorite labor food when I'm in labor. I'm like,
it's her favorite, like one of the things as labor's coming up that she looks forward to.
I do. It's my
She's
favorite.
like, cheese and crackers and ham. Can I have my treat? And her husband, like, it's like he's going to the movies or something because he's like, I need to get his bag of candy. And
I know he needs his gummy bears.
he needs his gummy bears to get, because they're gonna, they're ready. And Steph labor's pretty, pretty fast. But I had a midwife once that asked to have like, and I was so annoyed and I thought it was so rude to ask that she's, if she's coming, that you need to have food for people. And she's like, I've been to labors where they're 24, 36 hours and I can't leave, but I haven't eaten from before the time I even left to go to this. I can't go 48 hours without any food. And I was like, oh, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah. And
So,
as like being like I'm not a provider, but a support person, I can attest to that. Like I have been at 24-hour, 40-hour, 48-hour births where I don't have food, but like a little bit of snack. And I don't leave my clients. Like, and it's hard. Like, I've had to figure that out as a doula. Like, okay, what can I do instead? Like, where I've left a couple really hard births and been like, that was dumb. Like, I didn't have the food I needed as a support person. And I should have like packed more food. I should have figured out what I'm going to do because I didn't expect to be there that long. But like, yeah, you cannot expect yourself as a laboring mom going expending all that energy to not eat. So,
yeah,
definitely eat. And the reason that like people think, oh, I can't eat and drink during labor is because,
the
back
hospital
in the
tells you that.
yeah, but back in the day, they used to put women out. Have you heard of twilight birth? They used to put women out when it was like getting surgery. You'd go get
They
you
put
couldn't
you
have the food because they were worried you would aspirate it. And so if you have an epidural, they don't let you eat because um they're worried like if you need to go into surgery or whatever. But it doesn't make any sense because even if you go get a C-section, you have an epidural that is sufficient for the C-section. You don't need to be completely put under anesthesia
They
for a
don't, yeah, they
C-section.
just don't want to worry about you vomiting at the same time
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
cutting your abdomen open.
Right.
That could probably tear stuff, but
Yeah.
if you're trying for natural labor and you're really you really do need the energy. You need
Yes.
the energy to be able to pull that off.
Right. Key number 8, keep moving around during labor. We've talked a lot about that, and don't labor on your back. I mean, if you want to, if that's where it's most comfortable for you to labor is on your back,
The
by all
majority of
means, but
women, probably like 99% of them, aren't laboring on their back because it's not an ideal position to position the baby in. But a lot of women do like labor laying on their side with their big body pillow or their birth pillows. And I know of ladies who have really, that was how they were most comfortable.
right. But laying on your back, especially with your feet up in the stirrups and stuff, is just, it leaves the smallest outlet for your baby to get out of. Your baby actually has to go uphill to get out the way that the baby comes through the pelvis and stuff. And so all of your bones move, your tailbone, your coccyx moves out when the baby's head comes through. Your hips move. And so you want to leave room for your body to move as the baby comes out. And that will make things a lot easier. Key
Well, and
number
it
9.
also helps continue keeping you moving, can help labor contractions and stuff
Yeah.
along too.
Yep, it does. This one's funny.
I insisted it remained because when I was at the hospital, I swear that was the only, they were coming in and checking your cervix like they were looking for a good luck charm or something. All right, time to check. Are you having another contraction? All right, we're going to check during that contraction. And
Let's check the magic 8-ball.
yes, I was like, it was terrible. It was like sailors get on ships and they touch the horse shoe as they get on, or, a certain thing, or
For good luck.
for good luck. And I mean, everybody coming in that room was, all right, we need to check you. And that was the only time they were coming in. Let's check you. And then let's look at that little readout on the paper they wanted.
Yeah. So key number 9 is to remember your cervix doesn't need to be checked constantly.
Yes.
Avoid getting constant cervical exams, because it is a lot of anxiety for you. First of all, is like you're putting pressure on yourself. Like, did I perform well enough? Did I pass the
Yeah.
test? Have I dilated
be,
enough since last time you were here?
yeah.
Like, it's just,
It's
don't put that pressure on yourself to feel like, did I do good enough? Oh no, I didn't. I only dilated 0.5 centimeter in the last 2 hours. My body isn't working. What's wrong? This isn't happening. And then you start to worry.
Or like Steph's birth story she shared in a past class. It's discouraging. And you don't want to feel discouraged and be like, it's not working. I'm never having this baby. I'm done. And then you're not able to relax when you want to cry, because you're stressed out now on a different level, and you're worried about not performing right. And I didn't do well. And now I'm not. Everything's closing up, and you can get stressed out and close your cervix right back up. And it's really painful if you're laboring and you're in a good rhythm, and then to have to lay down and they make you put your legs back up, and they want to do it during contractions, and it's very painful. And it's for most women, going to the gynecologist and putting our legs up and having everybody put their fingers in you is not a pleasant experience, and it's not looked forward to. And it's even worse to be put into like an already stressful situation, being at the hospital, have somebody to be like, multiple people need to come in and put their fingers up you and have you put your legs in those stirrups in such a weak, not a weak position, but you're so vulnerable. You're so vulnerable, and you're already so vulnerable having to do, like, being in the birth way. And it really can really make it so that you're not able to relax and whatnot. So you don't need a cervical exam for every nurse that comes in on staff.
Yeah. And you don't need to get a cervical exam every hour either.
No.
Like, you don't have to dilate a certain amount every hour. It's not like this everywhere anymore, but the common thing has been like, we like to see you dilate now a centimeter an hour, but that's just an arbitrary number anyway, because
a centimeter
an hour for everybody. It might take
be done in 10 hours.
Yeah. It might take 5 hours to dilate a centimeter. You don't know. And a lot of times a woman will get to like a 7, and she'll go from a 7 to 10 in 30 minutes. So you just don't know. So, I mean, when you get an epidural, then they need to check you regularly, because they need to see if you're actually dilating.
Well, and you don't have any signs to give them or tell them how you're feeling, or.
Yeah, you don't. But with a natural labor that's unmedicated, you can see whether labor's progressing. It's pretty obvious. In fact, it's not uncommon for in a home birth, like, for there to be little to no cervical checks at all during labor. Because
I don't think I got checked at all at any of my home births or my birth center birth.
Yeah.
I mean, part of that's because I got to be honest, part of that is because I labor very fast.
Yeah, you do labor so fast.
So, I mean, I didn't need to. Now, if I was going on like 8-10 hours, 24 hours, then I probably would have had something in there, because I know I would have gotten impatient. And if it's been a few hours, and even if you would like to know and be like, I would like to know, it feels like it's going, like, then that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. If you want to get checked, that's fine. But if
you
don't feel that you have to. Okay.
But you don't have to have everybody come in and check every time they walk in the dang room.
Right. Okay, so key number 10, this is important. This is just use your brain. This is an acronym that doulas, especially, we use this when we're helping clients through decision making during labor. So when something comes up, and this is during pregnancy too, and even with, I mean, this is just a great acronym for all of life in general, like your own health, your children's health, whatever. Um, birth isn't a set playbook. We don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict how your birth's going to go or what may or may not happen during labor. But the number one key that we've talked about before is that no matter what, you should just be in the driver's seat and be making informed decisions based on informed consent the entire time. So
Yes.
if
And this should be for all of your care outside of
yes,
pregnancy as well.
always, yeah, you should be in the driver's seat. You should be making the decisions based on the benefits and risks and deciding what you feel is best for your situation, without fear. And this brain process helps you to do this without fear and make sure that you're making decisions that you feel good about and that are right for you. So anytime something comes up during your labor or before or whatever, so say you have a suggestion to get induced, just say that. Consider B, what are the benefits of getting induced? Why are we talking about this? Then let's talk about the risks. So we have these benefits, we have these risks, and then what are the alternatives? What could we do instead? So you can think about whether there's other things that you can do and what are the benefits and risks of those things. And then very importantly, what does your intuition tell you about this decision? What does your gut tell you? You should listen to your gut. And as a mom, I feel like I feel like everybody has an intuition about their own health, but especially like as moms, I feel like oftentimes we just have a strong intuition about what's right for,
with
yeah,
our kids.
for us or our kids or our babies or whatever. So what's your intuition telling you? And then what happens if you do nothing? So remember always that doing nothing is a choice. You can do nothing. You don't have
It is
to.
always a choice to do nothing.
It's always a choice to do nothing. And what could happen if you do nothing? So you can go through this process as many times as you need for every single decision that you need during labor. And no matter what happens, you should be able to, at least, even if something goes like off of your birth plan, you're like, well, geez, I didn't really want that. Or I guess I did end up needing Pitocin, or maybe you do end up needing an epidural, or you find that epidural is what the better choice is given what happens in your labor. If you've made the decision though, because you felt that was best for you, you're not going to end up feeling like you were blindsided or you were like, all this was taking you by surprise, So if you're
you thought through your decision and you're willing to own that decision.
Right. So remember this, to use your brain with everything. I think that's a huge key.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else on that?
I was just gonna say, even this travels out into, I mean, really every area of your life, but take it out with your newborns and your children too, for anything at any time when you're doing stuff with them. There have been multiple times I've gone to the doctor and they've given me something and I was like, I just think you're missing it. That's not that's just not quite what we needed. And most of the time I'm right with my kids. And when you get a good provider for pediatrics and stuff, then a good provider will listen to you and talk to you about it. And you can come up with a good solution for your family. And if something does end up not going quite right, you don't feel so bad later because you're like, I did think about it. I thought about it. I went through it. And at the time, this was the best decision. Maybe it didn't come out with the best outcome that I wanted, but it was the best decision. It was the best call.
Right. It was the best call. And I'm confident in the decision that I made.
Yep. And willing to accept the risks.
Yes. So above all, with all of what we've talked about, just remember, like, you are a rock star. You can have a birth you love. You are capable of doing everything that you want. You can do it. Like, just have confidence that you can. And
you can do it. And regardless, I put this slide in here because regardless of the outcome, as long as you used your brain in those, you can love your birth even if you end up having a C-section.
Yeah.
As long as you are a part of the process, as instead of somebody else telling you what you're going to do with your baby and your body.
Right. Or fear,
And
or
not talking to you about it.
or like you making decisions in fear because you were basically fear mongered into decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just want you to know that you're a rock star, and we just want you to be empowered in whatever kind of decisions you make in your birth. And even if it doesn't go how you planned, that as stuff changes and this is, different situations arise during a birth, and maybe even your own opinion in the middle of it is like, you know what, this is really, really hard labor. I'm having such a bad time. I really need an epidural. Like that, you get through it and you made the decision that was right for you. And there have been, Steph's even had clients that were like, yeah, you know what, I really did need that epidural.
Yeah.
It was, and you know what, I'm happy I did it. And yeah, maybe next time I'll be able to get through it. But this time I thought through it. I pushed through it, pushed past when I had initially wanted it till my breaking point, and went through those steps that Steph just talked about. And in the end still was like, it wasn't what I originally planned. I'm satisfied. And you want to come out satisfied.
Right. So hopefully we've given you a lot to think about, a lot of value in working towards the natural birth that you want. And I think we packed this 4 series with a lot of information that I really think, as just an experience as a doula, that is going to be super helpful to being able to have the type of your birth that you want. If you want more support, like, gosh, I really have questions, or you want to be able to have, more personalized help with your own questions, your own thoughts, your own birth plan, that kind of thing, we have put together an offer for you. If you felt like you got great value out of this natural birth success formula, I offer virtual doula services, which I don't do a lot of these. But we did want to
forced her to add these. I put the slide in and texted her and said, we're putting this in this time. And she was like, okay. She doesn't do them much anymore. She turns them down a lot.
I do turn down doula clients at this point. But yeah, we are going to offer this. I don't know if I will offer it again when we do this natural birth success formula, which won't be offered for free again, by the way. But I do have virtual doula services. So basically what this is, we talked a little bit about it last week, is I obviously can't be in person at births that aren't local to me, but I can provide all that I do for my doula clients other than the physical part of being at the birth. So 2 prenatal appointments where we go through all of your options. You get a complete birth preference packet that I provide to my clients, where we go through like a load of all options, all the things from what are you going to wear to labor to, just so much stuff, to newborn preference options, all the options that you have for your baby, like what they're going to do, from what, the eye ointment they put in the baby's eyes, what shots do they give the baby,
are they going to get a bath? Are they not going to get a bath? Do you
all
get
the things
to placenta with you and have a lotus birth, or are you not going to have a lotus birth?
Yes, all the things, so that you realize what your options are. We go through them all, and I help you with the risks, benefits, the evidence-based information on these choices. Okay. So we go through that, and then I create a personalized, done for you birth plan that I create for my clients that isn't annoying to nurses and hospital staff, because some birth plans are really annoying to them because they're like too long or whatever. Like, I have a certain way that I do it, and I get compliments from nurses on the way that I do these birth plans because it's really super easy. I know what should and shouldn't go in it. So we go through all of your options and make your birth plan for you.
It allows the nurses to feel respected as well, that you're not just giving them demands as if they don't know how to do their job, because these nurses, they're good nurses.
They're not dumb.
In the hospital.
Yes, and they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
We go through your past birth history. If you've had kids before, we talk about what you want for your birth. I hope you plan the birth the way that you want it. I share with you my doula comfort secrets for whoever's going to be at your birth physically hands-on with you. Where are the pressure points that I push on? What are the tricks that I bring to a birth so that what would I do if I were there? I tell you that so that whoever's there to help you, your husband, your sister, your mom, your friend, whatever, knows these things that they wouldn't know otherwise. I give you an "Are you in labor" flow chart that I created to help you know like whether you're actually in labor and if you should go to the hospital. But also, because this is a virtual doula service, you not only would get that flow chart, but you would have access to me to say like from from 38 weeks on to when you go into labor, you have 24/7 access to me, phone or Voxer. Voxer is like a walkie-talkie app, so you can ask questions or like, I don't know what's going on or to help you with anything that you need. You get one virtual postpartum appointment to help you with debriefing your birth. How did it go? How do you feel about it? Do you have questions about your baby? Do you need help with feeding questions, stuff like that? And newborn baby support. So you get all that. That usually I charge $5.97 for that. And you also get some bonuses. You get my book I wrote. You get an ebook copy of
It's a book on labor and birth and like
and your options. Why am I
It was a lot of this class in a book.
Yeah, it's a lot of this class, but the ultimate guide to birth options. You get a mini birth essential oil kit with mini sizes of my top 5 oils for birth: peppermint, clary sage, wild orange, balance, and aroma touch. So those are kind of, come on, Jen, those are kind of a catch-all for some of the oils that I take to birth to help with pain and moving labor along and all kinds of stuff. I have my dog and my baby here visiting.
Oh my God.
And then bonus number 3 is a little booklet for how to use essential oils during birth so that you know what to do with them, and gives you some good uses. So that complete set is a value of $668 with these 3 bonuses in your virtual doula service that we're offering with this class only for $297, which I was like, but because it is a lot of my time, but I really want to be able to be helpful. So you can grab that. Or last week, one of the things that we talked about a little bit more in depth for pain was essential oils for birth, because that's one of our areas of expertise. I've studied essential oils for pregnancy, birth, and babies for the last 9 years or something. And so
one of her top like requested things at her births.
Yeah, this is one of the things that people love the most about my service, is because I know how to confidently and safely use essential oils during birth. A lot of people don't know what's safe, what's not safe. I've dug into this really deep. So if you
come up to her who don't really know a ton about them, but are like, I know that certain oils are slowing people's labors down. You're not using those, are you? And she's like, no way. I know when and what parts of your labor and what stuff and when these should be used. So they don't like inhibit anything either. They just move it along. They make you feel good, nice and grounded.
Right. And we put together this set. We talked about this last week as well, but this ultimate birth and postpartum kit, we have this set of this kit here up in the top left. We use doTERRA essential oils because we talked about it a little bit before, but I'm not going to go into it this week. But really, they're the only oils I'll touch, especially for birth and babies. I would never use other oils on my clients.
Other oils on your
they're just the most tested oils in the world, and they're used by hospitals all over the place. So
yeah, they're used in hospitals and stuff, and a lot of doctors are using them. There's an oncology department that really utilizes them, and they only use the doTERRA ones, and I don't think they're like in the essential oil grade as normal ones on the market. So
Yeah, so these are the oils that we use and promote, but doTERRA offers this awesome kit with 10 oils and a diffuser in it, and these are like, man, this is like an awesome birth kit. It would give you everything that you need to take care of all sorts of health issues at home, which we help you with. If you wanted to do this, but then I included frankincense touch and clary calm. This is a women's blend that's really great for monthly women's stuff, like every month, but
Yeah.
also great for labor too. And then a complete vitamin pack, which I don't want to go into all this, but there's a reason that this is a powerhouse set, gives you everything you want. So if you wanted to have all these oils for birth and to kind of transform the health of your home to get kind of into natural healthcare, you could snag this whole thing for $480, all this stuff. And then you get the virtual doula service thrown in as a bonus.
Plus
For
all today's
free.
bonuses.
So this is just, yeah, for free. So more about what comes with the kit. You get also a free labor rollerball blend that I make, which is like a catch-all kind of for labor. It helps with pain, bleeding. So it helps prevent bleeding. It helps with your hormones, with your stress, mood, all that kind of stuff.
Period cramps too.
Period cramps too. Yeah. Free 1-hour virtual doula consult. This is kind of like, you get the whole virtual doula service if you do this, the ultimate birth kit. So that was just, you get an 8-week oil masterclass for free as well to help you learn how to use these oils for everything else, because this is like a healthcare plan. Like if you want to save tons of money on your healthcare and learn how to use these kind of things instead of like some of the more expensive and
it'll cover stuff like using it with your kids and your family safely, and addressing all those, I mean, kids and oils, Googled online a lot. It always brings up a lot of questions, and we touch on those.
Yeah, so we help you with all that. We give you a personalized wellness consult to talk about like what health issues do you have in your house that you might want to learn how to tackle with natural remedies. We talk about that with you. And then you also get a free wholesale membership with doTERRA for a year where you can buy anything that you want at 25% off. So anyway, you get all that with the free doula service. This offer is a crazy was a crazy offer. So it's good until January 23rd is when this will expire. So that's like a little over, well, it's a little less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I mean, Steph probably won't end up doing it again. She'll make me delete it off of our stuff because it takes up her time, and she's already pretty picky about her doula clients now, and she's actually got a meeting.
I do have a meeting tomorrow with a potential doula client, but I am picky about taking my time to do that, because Crystal and I really like where our focus is I find, especially like in this kind of work working a lot with a lot of pregnant women and stuff, they have their babies and they're like, gosh, I don't want to go to work.
It started out with I want to stay home with my baby. My 6 weeks maternity leave is up. I want to stay home with my babes and stay home with them. And then you also notice the trend of moms who are staying at home, and they know they need to be at home, and they know that's like the most important, but they're starting to feel like they're losing themselves.
Yeah. And they're like, I need something else, and life is expensive. And so we've been able to build a successful business from home with 6 kids. And so that's kind of really where the heart, like, what's that passion project is really helping other moms be able to figure out how the heck can I make money from home and be able to be with my kids. So that's where my time goes. And so
from their own passions too.
Yeah. So I've cut back on how much doula work I'll take, because it takes time away from being able to do that. So anyway, yeah. So any questions, comments? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording real quick. Do you have a question, Monica?
No, I just, I really appreciate all that you guys have talked about, and